keep his name and memory. He's left his mark on innumerable sides of our national life. Today, so many of his measures, which are accepted as part of our social structure, were instituted by him. A great statesman, a great prime minister, a great patriot, and a great man. Minister of State, my Lord Lieutenant, my Lords, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed right that the Prime Minister, for the time being, of the United Kingdom should come to Cardiff, the capital city of Wales, to pay tribute to the greatest figure in Welsh history, David Lloyd George. I count it a great privilege to be able to be at this ceremony and to dedicate or unveil this statue, not merely on behalf of the Welsh people, but of the whole country, and indeed on behalf of hundreds of thousands of British people in every part of the world. David Lloyd George was the first Welshman to become Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. And for that reason alone, it would be appropriate to have a statue in his memory in Cardiff. But he was also a man of rare genius who brought to our political life and to the affairs of this great nation of ours all the imaginative and intuitive qualities of his race. He combined these, this sensitiveness, this intuitive feeling, with extraordinary courage and audacity. He was, of course, a controversial figure, sometimes revered and venerated by some, at the same time feared and vilified by others. It is perhaps rather strange to recall that the critics and the supporters tended to change sides. It was sometimes from one side or sometimes the other that he was the attacked or was the hero. But he went proudly on his way, a giant among pygmies. Many of us here remember David Lloyd George. I only knew him personally when political fortune appeared to have deserted him. He did not change his courage or good humor. I remember, and I shall, with gratitude, his kindness to me when I was a very young member of the House of Commons, and, although not on his dramatic scale, something of a rebel. And I was proud to play a humble part with him in the protest against poverty and unemployment in the years of the Great Depression. I therefore regard it as a most moving thing in my life. I never dreamt it could come to me then, to be asked to pay this tribute to his memory. No one who ever heard him speak can forget the experience. In the fervor of his oratory, he would carry his audience beyond day-to-day affairs with the power to appeal to the deepest springs in the national character. When the odds were heaviest, he was at his best. He liked a task when it was the most difficult. He stood out, for instance, against burial rights. Strange subject for a young man, but it was a great battle. When he was Chancellor of the Exchequer, his fiscal measures were novel and revolutionary in those days. Alas, those of us who have since suffered from the Treasury's scorpions would be very happy to look back to those mild whips. Later, when he was Prime Minister, his leadership in the First War gave him an authority only equaled by Chatham and Pitt among his predecessors and by Churchill among his successors. Of course, there were controversies around him, for he had, of course, the faults as well as the qualities of genius. Sometimes impatient as to detail, sometimes unpredictable. But he never shrank from taking decisions, nor swerved from them when they were taken. He was the president of the ship in the First World War. Without him, we could well have lost it. As Minister of Munitions, he harnessed all his powers to supply our armies in France. And I remember well, never having seen or heard of Lloyd George except by what one read as a young officer, the sense of comfort to feel that he was in charge. He never lost confidence as Prime Minister, never lost his vigor, his imagination, and he kept alive the spirit of the people even in the darkest hours. Oratory was for him a stimulus. He carried his audience with him, and he, of course, was never happier than when he spoke in Welsh. He never forgot his own land and did much for Wales. The Welsh Health Insurance Commission, subsequently the Welsh Board of Health, was the first autonomous government department in Wales. And one might say that the present structure of government, where every important home department has its office and life in Wales, largely dates from the movement in local administration which Lloyd George began. All joined together in simple unity to salute alive forever in British hearts throughout the world.
Mr. Prime Minister, Mr. Chairman, Lord Lieutenant, Your Worships, members of the Lloyd George family, ladies and gentlemen. I esteem this a particular. I think that this day in the history of Wales will be remembered with great feeling.
Death, Cardiff honours a great son of Wales. Mr. MacMillan came to unveil the statue and to pay tribute to David Lloyd George.
Perhaps the governing passion of his life was a belief in the rights of the individual and a love of small nations. And when he was defending what he thought to be right and his ideals, he was prepared to do so alone if necessary.
The sculpture, the work of Michael Rizello, dramatically recalls LG's forceful personality.
He's left his mark on innumerable sides of our national life. Today, so many of his measures, which are accepted as part of our social structure, were instituted by him. A great statesman, a great prime minister, a great patriot, and a great man.